So today we'll build a full stack Crud application using Nextjs14, Prisma as our ORM, and Pstgrsql as our database. Here we have a simple full stack Crud application that we built with Nextjs and nextui as our component library. And we're starting by having the ability to toggle between light and dark mode. Obviously you can see several players listed here within our tracker. We have the ability to search by the player's name. As you can see, we just search for Jay, just search for Tommy. If we search for Jazz, and if we happen to type a character that we don't have a result for, no players added, start tracking today. So let's just say we want to add a new player, and this new player name is going to be Edward, and Edward's jersey number, we'll give him a jersey number of number 85. He had a chance to play in a total of 12 plays within the game, and we'll say Edward plays the sport of football, and you can see that it is now highlighted. And then once we click submit, you see that we get submitting. We got a quick React toast notification, and now we have Edward listed here within our player log. So if we click on Edward, we get redirected to the collection/ID page. Within this site, or within this page, excuse me, we have the ability to delete the player if need be, but we also have the ability to update the player's information. So let's say that we forgot to type in Edward's nickname, and we'll say Edward is the legend. No, we'll say Edward the icon. And then we'll say that Edward's new number is number 84, not 85. And he actually played 15 total plays, and we'll keep his game or his sport of choice as football. And if we click update, we see we get updating. We get redirected back to the home screen, and now we see the new updated name listed for Edward. But we had our days wrong, and we want to just remove Edward totally. So if we click on Edward's name again and we click on the trash icon, you see that we get deleting, and you see that Edward is now no longer listed within our game tracker log. So this is our full stack Crud application that we'll be building. We're going to use quite a few features in order to bring this to life. If you think it's something you'll be interested in building, stay tuned, and I'm going to walk you through step by step how I built this project. So we'll start by adding a directory to our desktop, and I'm going to name this project Full Stack Crud Next14 Prisma, and just pick enter. Feel free to name yours whatever you like. And I'm going to bring up VS Code. That'll be the editor that I use in this project. And we'll just drag this directory inside of our text editor. And we can reduce the size of the screen a little bit. And close out this file, and let's go within our terminal. And we'll start by installing Nextjs. So we'll type in the command npx create next app at latest. And we want to install it in this directory, so we'll go space dot. And looks like might have typed something there wrong. Give me a second. npx create next app at latest. All right, there we go. And for this particular project, we're not going to use TypeScript. We'll say yes to ESLint, yes to Tailwind, no to the SRC, yes to the app router, and no to the import alias. And we'll give it a few moments to finish installing. Okay. Give it another minute or two. Okay, and it is finished installing. And what I want to do first is I want to set up nextui, and we'll go ahead and go to the documentation for it. And I know I need to add in a lib directory. I'm going to store a few different items within our lib folder. The first thing we'll add is a wrapper in order to wrap our nextui project. So within this directory, or excuse me, to wrap our Nextjs project with the next theme provider, because we want the ability to toggle between light and dark mode. So we'll add a file named nextthemeprovider.js. And within it, I'm just going to paste in some code. What this is nextui obviously is a client-side application, and I want to keep this project as much to server-side as possible. We will have some client-side components within it. So I'm going to add this theme provider within its separate directory so that we can wrap our application that is a client, or excuse me, a server-side component within, so that we can wrap our next theme provider around our layout file and not change it to a client-side directory. So we'll go ahead and, well, I'll tell you what, first let's just go ahead and install the nextui dependency, and we'll go to installation, and if we scroll down, we have it listed here. So we'll go ahead and I'll just type clear so you can see it a little easier, and we'll paste in this command, and I'm going to add React icons as well. We'll need that quite a bit throughout the project. And then once we have this, just go ahead and press enter, and we'll give it a few minutes to finish installing. And within our Tailwind config file, we'll need to bring in a few commands. So I'm going to go ahead and add those while it's installing. And we'll need the dark mode right above the plugin, and we need to update the plugin with the nextui plugin. And I'm going to remove the background image. I do like to have a little bit of consistency throughout the project, so I'm going to remove this background image and I'm going to replace it with colors, and you can see that a little better. CLRIS, and the colors I want to have is primary, and we'll go pound 00997CE, and I think that'll be the only color that we use in this project, and we'll just use different shades of it. So just make sure you save this file, and the next theme provider, you want to make sure you want to have this theme provider and make sure you have the naming convention as such, otherwise you will run into some errors. And then before we start the project, let's go into our root directory and let's click on the app folder, and inside of layout, I want to wrap the main layout file or the main layout with the next theme provider. So just go ahead and copy the children's and delete it. And inside of the body tag, we want to bring in next theme provider. Just make sure it is coming from @lib and paste in the children. That way the theme provider is wrapping our children. And before we spin up our project, let's go into our app directory, and in the home page, let's remove everything off of our home page. And if you're using Visual Studio Code, let's create or use the React snippet and type in RFCE, and we'll create a new function named homepage. Sorry about that. Home page. And feel free to name yours whatever you like. I just like to stay consistent with some of my naming. And then make sure you save this file and you can close it out, and you can close out the layout. And the last thing we want to do is remove the starter CSS styling that's listed within Nextjs. Let's keep the Tailwind configuration, but we can remove all of the boiler coding for the CSS. And let's replace it with the body tag, and I want to have the overflow X set to hidden. Now let's save this file and let's spin up our server to make sure it's running correctly. So in the terminal, let's type in the command npm run dev just to make sure that it's working. And I'm gonna go ahead and open up a tab to localhost 3000, and let's see what we get. And it's still not able to find the Nextjs file. Let's see here. You know what? I bet so I need to tag. Sorry, you have to install Nextjs separately. So just type in npm I and just type in next-themes. And I did it in a separate terminal so I can keep the main one running, and then press enter. And now we see that we have our home page displayed. And if we go back to our terminal that's currently running and just refresh it, we see that we no longer get any errors. So it seems that we have the theme provider set up appropriately. And just to make sure, on the home page, just to test it out, I'm going to start by bringing in a button. So if you're following along with me and you type in the open bracket and you type in capital B for button and then TTON. It didn't automatically import, that's fine, but let's go back to the Nextui documentation, and if we go to button, let's go ahead and copy this initial import, and let's just bring in button, and then let's type hello world to make sure that it's working. And then save. And if we go back and just refresh our screen, we see that we do not have a button. And tell you what, let's do this. Let's go class flex column, and nope, it is still not working. So now let's go. I know what we need to add in the configuration. So sorry about that. I added this piece, but I forgot to add the node module. So if you go back and let's just copy this node module, let's hit save this and go back. And now you see we have a very large button listed here, or showing here I should say, but that just tells us that it is working. If I'll just remove the flex and the class name, you see that button looks a little different. Okay, so we have our theme provider set up and Nextui is working as designed. So the first thing I want to do, just to kind of get us going, is do some basic styling for our layout. So if we take a look at the main project, you'll see that we have the home page or the home route. We have a header, we have a little description that just welcomes the user to our site. We have a search bar, we have the link to add a player, and then we have a little grid layout that has the player cards. And if we click on a player, we then get redirected to a folder of collection that is listed out by ID. We have a back button and we have the form in order to update a player. So if we go back, we notice that we're going back to the home screen. We have a collection/ID route. And if we click on add player, we also have a /new route. So we'll have a total of 3 routes for this particular project. And we also have a few different components as well. So let's start by, let's go ahead and close out the, well, I better save it first. Let's close out the page.js and the tailwind config file. And I'm going to close out the terminal for right now. In the root directory, let's add a folder named components. And inside of components, let's add a file named header. And inside of components, I also want to add a file named forms. And for right now, I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit more styling to the page. So first, inside of the header directory, let's add a file named header.js. And inside of this file, we're going to have the main header that we noticed on our on the project. So for right now, we'll use the React snippet to create a function, and let's rename this function to header with a capital H. Now we want to bring it in so that we can actually see it, and we're not going to bring it into our main layout. We're going to create a separate layout file that I have a few imports. So inside of the main app directory, let's create a directory or a folder named website that will have parentheses around it. And it'll help if you spell website correctly, unlike I did. There we go. And I want to drag the page.js within the website folder. That way all of the pages are within website, and this main layout will just have the next theme provider, and that's it. Inside of the website folder, let's add another file named layout.js. And this particular layout file will be the file that I have our header and any additional imports that we want to have, so that we're keeping the two layouts separate. So this layout, let's go ahead and get it functioning so that we don't get any errors. So we'll go RFCE, and then inside of it we'll pass in children. And just to make sure that it's working, I'm going to pass children and keep layout listed here. And if we save the file, we see layout and we don't see header. But let's go back to the page.js file and let's type in header. And we see that on the home page we have the word header, and then we have layout. So we see that the separate layout file, or the special layout file within the website directory, is working. So I'm going to remove header from the home page and I'll save it. And then inside of the main layout, or excuse me, the new layout that we just created, I'm going to remove the word layout, and I'm just going to replace it with the header that we just created. That way we are seeing our header on the screen. So I'm going to say header. And if you type the open bracket capital HEADER, you should have the ability to import it from @components/header/header. And if you close this, the bracket out and save the file, you're going to see the header now listed on the home page. So we can close out this layout file, and we are done with the main page for right now. What we just want to focus on is the header, so that we can add a little bit of style to it. And if you noticed in the header, it didn't have much. The only thing that we had is a place for a logo and the theme toggle. So I'm going to go ahead and just minimize that for right now, and let's just begin to type out a little bit of code. So nope, don't want to be in home page. Let's close it out. Let's go back to header, and let's remove the tag, the div tag, and let's replace it with the HTML header. And in it, I'm gonna give it a class name, and I want to give it a padding of 6, and I'm going to add the border just on the bottom, and we'll hit save, and you now see that we have the border listed there. So now what I want to do is I want to contain the size of this project. If you notice, we only have the viewport of the project within this box. So to keep it consistent, so that it is consistent throughout the project, I'm going to create a separate box component. You don't necessarily have to. I just choose to do so because it makes it a little easier, and it also just keeps the layout much more consistent. So in the components directory, let's create a file named box.js. And inside of this file, we'll start by typing in the snippet so that we create a function. And I'm going to name this box with a capital B. And for right now, let's just go ahead and bring it into the header so we can see it come to life. So back in the header, I'm going to type in open bracket capital B for box. And as you're typing it out, you should see it come from .. That's the one that we want. And this is not going to be a self-closing. We want it to be open because we want to pass things inside of this box. So I'm going to just type in header. That way we'll see it on the screen. And we don't see much now because the box is listed right here, and I didn't pass children into it. So if we pass in the children and we remove the word box and we replace it with children, you're going to see the box change to header, and then now the header, the word header, excuse me, is wrapped with the box that we just created. So to give this box a little bit of its own styling so that it is consistent throughout the site, I'm going to give it a class name, and I'm going to start by giving it a max width of the screen, and I want to make it medium. This is just for styling purposes. You can make it any size you like. So I'm going to make it medium, and then we're going to set the margin to auto. And I'm going to leave it at that for right now just to see what we get. And if we click save and refresh the window, you'll notice that nothing really changes, but now the header is listed in the middle of the screen versus far off to the left. That's because of the width that we set the box to. So now just to give it a little bit of padding so that it is appropriate as the viewport changes, I'm going to set on extra large, I want the padding on the X to be 20. On medium devices, I want the padding on the X to be 10. And on small devices, I want the padding on the X to be 2. And any other, and just normally, I want the padding to be set to, the padding on the X to be set to 4. So if we save this file, you'll notice a slight or subtle movement with the header. That's because of the viewport size, and it's just giving a little bit of padding on the X. So we can go ahead and close out that box file. We have it created now, and we shouldn't need it. We shouldn't need to edit it, I should say, anymore throughout the project, but we absolutely will need it. So for right now, let's go ahead and just continue to style our header. So I'm going to remove the word header, and I'm going to add a div or replace it with a div and give it a class name. And this is going to set the direction of the header. So I want to set it to flex. I want the items to be spaced out. So I'm going to say justify between. We'll set the width to full. And we'll place the items to be center along the X axis. Now within this div, I want to add two things. I want to add the logo on the far left and a theme toggle on the right. So the logo, we'll set it as a H1. We'll give it a class name of text, and I want the text to be large. And just so that we can see it, I'm gonna go ahead and type in logo. I think I made it all caps. Did I make it all caps? No, I didn't, but it's okay. We'll keep it all caps for this video. And we'll set on medium devices, I want the text size to be extra large. On large devices, I want the text size to be 2XL. And I want the font to be bold. And if we click save, you'll notice that the logo is now bold because we set the H1 font to be bold. Now next to the logo, I want to add in the theme toggle, and I'm going to be using a toggle from nextui. And it makes it much simpler. I did customize it a little bit, so feel free to set yours to however you like. But let's just go ahead and add in the theme toggle so we can bring it in. So within the header, I'm going to add a file named theme toggle.js. And within it, let's just save it. Let's declare this as a client-side component because it is. And let's just get something on the screen. So I'm going to create a function named theme toggle, save it, and then back in the header, I'm going to import it, theme toggle from /. There you go. And once you close it out, you'll see that you now have theme toggle on the screen. And this will be the last thing that we need to do within the header file, so we can go ahead and close it out. Now we do need a few things within our theme toggle in order to bring it to life and get it to work. First, we'll need to bring in use state and use effect. This is to capture the state that we're currently in and have the ability to toggle it. We're going to bring in use theme from next themes. We'll also use switch from nextui. And then last but certainly not least, we'll need some icons, and I'm going to use React icons for that. And I like to use the FI. Feel free to use whichever ones you like. and I want the sun and the moon. And that will take care of all of the imports for our theme toggle. Inside of the theme toggle function, let's bring in, we want to use the use state. So we'll need to do mounted, and then we'll need to say set mounted. And then we'll start this state by false, saying that it's in a false state. And it could easily be true. It's totally up to you. I'm just going to go with false. And then we'll go const theme. We'll go set theme. And then we'll go resolve theme. All right, yeah, so OLVED theme. And we'll set it equal to use theme. And then within it, we want to use effect. And we'll say set mounted. And we'll say true, because it's going to be toggled to true when it's toggled. And we'll pass back a empty array. And then underneath it, we want to have the ability to handle the toggle. So we'll go handle toggle. And we'll say set theme. We'll go resolve theme is equal to light, L-I-G-H-T. Or if it's dark. So we'll start in the light, and we'll have the ability to change to dark. I need to put an or there. That's right. Yep. And then we'll say underneath that handle toggle, we'll say if not mounted, we want to return null. Okay. So now that we have our functionality set up, let's get a little bit of life on screen. So first, I'm going to bring in the switch, and within this switch, we're going to pass in resolved theme, and we're going to set it equal to dark. And then inside of the switch, we're going to pass in a few things. We'll say default, D-E-F-A-U-L-T-E-D, default selected. We'll go resolve theme, and we'll set that equal to dark. Underneath default selected, let's set the size. I'm going to set it to medium. May change it to large. Hit save just to see what we get on the screen. Yep, I figured as much. Okay, so we'll just need a few more things. So we'll go on change. And we'll go on change we'll pass in the handle toggle function that we just created. And we'll say the start content. And this is all coming from nextui. We'll set the start content to be fi sun. And then we'll set the end content will be fi moon. Okay. And we'll go ahead and save this file. Let's go back to our header. Okay. And we're getting an error there. Let's see, use state, false, yep. Use theme, that looks good. Set the theme. Have it set as a client side. The header looks good. Well, no, I'm not looking at the header yet. Give me a second here, getting an error message. This is not an object. You need to change that to the brackets there. Now, let's save it. And medium is not defined. So the size of it. So I'm gonna change this to instead of brackets, just make it quotes, parentheses. There we go. And as you see, it is now toggling our theme. Cool. And this looks pretty good. Do I want to add anything else to it? Nope, 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 nope. Looks pretty good. Okay. And we have the FI sun and the moon. That looks good. Yep, I think we're okay right there. I'm gonna go back into lib. Let's go to primary. Let's make sure that's saved. Okay. And okay, looks good. So now that we have our theme toggle set up, the next thing I want to do is I want to go in and set up our connection to the database. And in this particular project, as I mentioned, we'll be using Prisma and Pstgrsql. So in the terminal, let's just go ahead and we can stop the current terminal that's running, and I'll type clear so you can see it better. So first thing we want to do is install Prisma. So we'll type in npm i-d and we'll type Prisma and press enter. And clear. Next up, we'll want to type in the Prisma client. So we'll go Prisma, or excuse me, npm i@prisma/client and then press enter. And then last but not least, once this is done, we want to initialize Prisma. So we'll type in npx prisma init and then press enter. And we didn't get any errors, so that is a good thing. And if we look in our main directory, we see that we have a couple new files. The first one is .prisma. And we actually have a schema file within a Prisma directory that was installed. So first thing I want to do is go to the .getignore file, and let's just go ahead and add .env to this file. That way our .env variables aren't public or exposed when we upload or deploy this to GitHub. So just go ahead and save the file. Next up, we'll need to update our .env file with our database. And for this project, as I mentioned, we'll be using vercel. So once you log in, I have a pro account, been pretty busy trialing and error different things out. But you can definitely use a free vercel account. But once you've logged in and set up an account, I want to create a storage bucket. And I'm going to create a Postgres serverless SQL storage. So just click accept. Feel free to name this whatever you like. I'm going to name it Crud Next Gamelog. And then hit create. Then you'll be redirected to the settings, or excuse me, be redirected to the storage settings of this particular bucket that we just created. And the main things we need from this file, in the .env local, we want to click show snippet and copy this snippet, and then go back to our .env file and just remove the database URL that's there and replace it with this snippet. Then if we close this file out and we click on Prisma, we want to copy this database source and we want to paste it in our schema.prisma file. And then once you replace the current database source with the new one, let's just go ahead and update our models. Now our model is going to be what allows us to store information or organize information in our database. In this particular project, we're only going to have one model, and that is for the player. And if you take a look at it, we only have one item that's stored within the database, and that's the player. So we'll go ahead and start by creating or typing in model, and the name of this model is going to be player. And we want to start with the ID, and I want the ID to be a string. You can make it an int if you like. I just like to keep it simple as a string. And then we'll go @ID, and then we'll go @default, And then inside of it, we'll type in CUID with brackets. And as long as it looks like that and you're not getting any errors, you're good to go. I'm going to close the terminal out. Next, we want to have a name as a string. Then we want to have a jersey as an int, for a number. Then we want to have plays, which represents the amount of plays the player actually played. You know, when you're tracking Little League games, everyone has to play and everyone has to play a certain amount of plays. So this is an easy way just to kind of keep track of it. After plays, we want to add sport of string. Then that will conclude the main things that we want to store. And I just like to keep when we created the file on listed, have it stored in the database just in case you want to add something else to it. But for this project, we're not, but I'm still just going to store it. And then after created at, we'll do updated at. And this is going to be date time, and it'll be at updated at. There we go. So if you save this file, that's going to conclude the models to help organize our data. So we can close this file out. And then finally, next we want to do is create a function that's going to run and connect the Prisma for us. So in order to do so, we'll just create a quick little function inside of our lib directory. So in lib, let's add a file named prisma.js. And then inside of this file, you can copy this directly from the Prisma documentation. But if you want, you can just follow along with me. So we first want to start by importing the Prisma client. And then we'll go const Prisma, Prisma client, singleton, yep. And then we'll give it, it's going to be an arrow function, and then we want to return new Prisma client. This is just to initiate it, and then we'll set a global for Prisma, global this, yep. And then underneath it, we'll go Prisma is equal to global for Prisma, or we'll go Prisma client, and we'll go export default Prisma, and then underneath it we'll go if process.env .node underscore env, and we'll go production, and then inside of it we'll go global for Prisma is equal to Prisma. And let's just save this. This looks good, and close this file out. Now we are ready to begin to push this to our database. So our database has these changes. So if you go into your terminal, and I got quite a few terminals, I only need 3, but we'll just keep the 4 for right now. If you go back into the top level terminal, or any of them will be fine, but I'm just going to go to the top level one. Let's go ahead and push this to our database. So let's type in the command npx prisma db push. Let's make sure we don't get any errors. Oh, looks good. It's perfect. And then last but not least, we want to type in npx prisma generate and then press enter. And then now that we have this complete, let's just go ahead and run our server to make sure we don't have any errors. So we'll go npm run dev. And while it is running in the other terminal that we created, type in the command npx prisma studio. Just a soft interface that gives us the ability to interact with Prisma and add things and update our database without being in vercel. So if you typed in npx Prisma Studio and press enter, you should have the Prisma interface launched on localhost 555. And if you click on player, you're going to see that you have the player model inside of your database. And as you notice, we don't have any players as of yet, which is fine because we just created the database and didn't add any players to it. So I'm just going to copy this localhost because I'm in a private browser and I just want to stay consistent. Once I paste it in, I go right back to where I were. I'm just going to go to the database table. And if we refresh our screen, we see that we have the home page with the logo and the theme toggle, and we have no error message. So that is a good thing. So now that we have our database set up and we have Prisma set up, first thing I want to do is start to style our overall layout. And this stuff is completely, this next step is going to be completely optional. It's not necessarily anything that you need or that's relevant to the site functionality, but I just like to have it just from a styling purpose. So inside of our page.js file that's within the website in bracket directory, I want to add a header here that just basically lists or that just welcomes the user to our page. So in the home page itself, I want to start by removing this div and replace it with a section tag. And we'll give the section a padding of 6. And within the section, I want to have this box that we had within the header. That way we're getting some padding. And if I just type home page just to make sure that it's showing up, you see that we have home page and you see that the padding is consistent with the padding of the header. That's because we created that reusable box component to ensure that we maintain some consistency. So now within the home page, I want to add a component that we can, and I don't want to keep it within this file because we're going to have enough going on within this file without the need of anything else. So I want to add a separate file called, I'll just call it site header, and you can name it whatever you want. But in components, I'm going to name a file named sites, or create a file named site header.js. And within this site header file, just to get it going, because I want to have something on the screen, we're going to go with the RFCE template and we'll go site header. Let's save this file. And inside of the home page, let's add in the site header component. And if we save the file, we now see that we have site header listed here on the screen. So I'm going to pull down the terminal because we don't necessarily need it right now. And let's just focus on styling this site header that we just created. So we'll remove the div tag and replace it with a section. And inside of the section, I'm going to have a div and I'm going to give it a class name of flex item center. We're going to give it a direction of column. That way they're going up and down. The items are the main, the H1 and the P tag that we'll eventually create. I want to give some space on the Y axis of 2. And we want the item centered, so we'll go justify center. And then within this div tag, we'll have a H1 and we'll just say Gamelog Tracker. We'll hit save. And I'm going to add a P tag just so we can have something on the screen for right now. And I'm going to say the home of Little League Game Log. Forgive the Little League game, the noise in the background. Little League Game Log Tracker. We can remove tracker, that's duplicate. So now I just want to style the H1 and the P tag a little bit. So the H1, we'll just go give it a class name and we'll say text2xl. On medium devices, we want it to be text3xl. And on large devices, we want it to be text4xl. And I want the font to be extra bold. And we'll hit save. And now you see that it is now bold. And we'll do the same thing or something similar with the p tag. We'll give it a class name. I'm gonna go leading relax, RELAXED, and we'll go text gray, AY 300, and we'll go font extra light, and we'll go tracking tighter, and just hit save. And then now you see that is the, I'm gonna make that a little darker. We'll go 600. There we go. Gamelog, that's the name of our site, the home of Little League Gamelog. Yeah, that'll work. And we'll just close this file out. So we have our header in place. Now we'll want to add a search bar and a link to redirect us to the new screen. So I'll start with the search bar first. So underneath the self-tagging site header tag, I'm going to add a div, and we'll give this a class name of flex. We'll go items center, and we'll give it a gap of 2. And within this, I want to have a search.js file within components, excuse me. And this is going to be a client-side component, so we'll just go ahead and mark it as use client. But for right now, it's not going to make much of a difference. And then we'll change it from a lowercase search to an uppercase search. Click save. And let's just go back to our home page. And if we bring in search, we see that we have search listed here on the screen. And then next, underneath search, I want to have a link. And this link is just going to redirect us to the new screen. So I'm just going to add a href/new, and we'll say add player. And I think I want to make this class flex, and I'm going to add a React Plus icon to it. And in flex, we'll go item centered. There we go. And now that we have this section in place, let's just go ahead and begin to style the search component a little bit. I'm not going to necessarily worry about the functionality just yet, but we will go ahead and just add some styling. We'll take care of the DF functionality later. So we'll go div class name. We'll make it relative. We'll give it a padding top of 4 and set the width to full. We won't save it just yet. We'll go input, and it's going to be a closing tag. We'll go type of text. We'll go placeholder of search, and we'll style it. We'll give it a class name. We'll go width of full. We'll go padding on the Y of 2. Padding left of 10, just so you can see something. There we go. We'll go border primary. I'll go primary. We'll just go primary. Then we'll go rounded of medium. We'll go focus, outline, none, focus, CUS. Border, we'll go primary, and we'll go 60. So if we save it, you see a little border there. Perfect. So now I just want to add a search icon. So we'll, underneath the input, we'll add a div. We'll give it a class name of absolute, because we have a relative, then you know we're going to have an absolute somewhere. We'll go inset Y, forgive me if I mispronounced that, and Y of 0. We'll go left of 0. This is just to fix the positioning. Well, I'll go ahead and bring it on screen. So I'm going to bring in a React FI search icon. So you just go open bracket FI, and then you'll begin to type in search, and then you can import it. And we'll give it a class name, and we'll go text gray 400. And then we'll set margin top of 4. All All right, so now you see the icon listed there on the screen. Let me give this cursor pointer. There. All right. And let me finish the positioning. So we have left of 0. We'll go flex item center, padding left of 3, and pointer events, we'll go none. And let's just save it. There we go. So now you see the search icon there. We can click in it. And if we click on, let me add a route. So before we click on add player, let's add in the website directory, let's add this particular route so that we can go to /new. So within the website folder, let's add a new folder named new. And inside of it, let's add a file named page.js. And we'll just add the RFCE template and name this function new page. Let's save this file, close it out for right now. We can close out search for right now. And let's just make sure that this page or that this link works. So if we click on add player, we're redirected to the new page. Perfect. So let's just go ahead and go back to this window so that we can see the home page. And now that we have the home page set up, next thing we want to do is begin to bring in we want to begin the layout so that we can start to bring in some items from the database. And although we haven't added any items into the database just yet, that's okay. Remember, we have that ability with the Prisma Studio. So underneath the link and the div that is holding our search and leak tag, let's add another div. And this particular div is going to hold the layout, and you'll notice it's going to hold the layout of our cards, our player cards that's listed here. And underneath that, we'll add a div and we'll give it a class name of grid. On small devices, I want 2 columns. On medium devices, we want, we'll go with 4 columns because it's not a very big, we only have a medium width, so we're not going to have very many columns. And we'll give it a gap of 4 so we can have some spacing in between each card. And just so that we can see what we have on screen, I'm going to add a div and I'm going to put a number there, and I'm going to go class name, and we'll say BG Orange, ORANGE 200. And before I save it, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put a few on screen. Save it, and you see that we have the ones listed there. And why is my background color not changing? Have I forgot how to do it already? Let's go BG Blue 200. There we go. I don't know why I didn't I misspelled orange. That's why. Let me just remove that. There we go. Save it. And as you can see, we have the card layout that we desire, and on the large screen it shifts back to a 4-card grid layout. Perfect. So I'm gonna add a little bit of margin top. Do I want to do it that way? Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit of margin top so it's not so close to the search bar. So we'll go margin top of 4, and if we save it, we see it shift down a little bit. Now, instead of having these player cards listed like this, I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And what I want to do is I want to replace this with a component that's going to display all of the player's information in a card versus making this file any larger than what it really should be. So within the components directory, let's add a file name. We can just name this player card, and then inside of it we'll add a file name player-card.js. And for right now, to display this card, I think this is probably going to end up being a client-side component. But for right now, just to get something on the screen so we can see what it looks like, I'm just going to do the RFCE template. We'll go player card, and we'll save this. And if we bring this player card onto the screen, just so we have something. We save it. You see the player card is now listed here on the screen. Perfect. So we're good. So I think what we'll want to do next is, I think the next thing that we want to do is create a list or have the list of our players so that we can utilize this card. So what we'll do is we'll keep the player list within this particular file, since this is all server side, and because that component could become a front end component, and then we'll run into a little bit of a pickle trying to have the client side component mixed in with the server side code. So let's do this. Let's create a asynchronous function called player list, and I'm gonna make this player list, and we'll remove the player card for right now. And this player list, we'll just pass it in like that, and then we'll say let collections. That's what I'm going to name this, the function that's going to hold all of the collections that we get. And what we'll do is we'll say if collections dot length, length, is equal to 0, then we want to return a message to the user, and I'm just going to add some style div, not dove, div. We'll give it a class name, and we'll go text center. We'll go call span 4. That way it takes up the entire, because what I want is a little message right here. Let me just save that so that goes away. What I want is, and we can just add this player list, and we can save it. Yep, I figured it wouldn't be able to read that just yet because I need to bring in Prisma next, but that's okay. So that's okay though. We'll just say div, and then we'll go a div inside of it, and we'll go class name of flex column. We'll go space on the Y of 1, and then what I want is a H2 class name font bold, and I want it to say no players added. And then we'll add a description or a secondary message that says start tracking players today. And we'll give this a little bit of style. I'll give it a class name. I'll just make it font light to keep it simple. Let's save this. Now the reason we're getting this is because it doesn't recognize what collections is. So in order to define collections, we're going to say const collections. We'll go, actually, you know what? We don't need to do that just yet. We'll go const collections is equal to await, and we want to use Prisma, and just make sure you're importing it from @lib. That's the Prisma function we created. And then I'm gonna go dot, and we want the model we only have one, so we want to use the player model. And for this one, we're gonna go find many, which is a Prisma functionality that's gonna allow us to find or get all models of this player, or excuse me, that's gonna allow us to get all players within the player model. And then we'll just hit save. And let's see, Prisma player, find many, nope. And let's hit save. Make sure it's coming from there. So if it's not, if it's saying that it's undefined, I need to make sure that I didn't misspell anything. I got you, my friend. Okay, and we'll go ahead and let me just make sure that we didn't misspell anything. Const collections equals await. Yep, that looks good. That looks good. And let me make sure this Prisma function lib. tell you what, let's go Prisma, Nextjs. Let's go Nextjs, Prisma, Postgres. Okay. And I think this is it. This should be one of them. I'm gonna maximize this screen for a minute. Let's go get started. Postgres. You can change this to Java. Yep. Script. We'll go next. Yep. Hold on 1 second. And yep. Here we go. That is pretty much what we have. So let me make sure. Sorry, give me just a second here. Make sure that I have the same connection string because it shouldn't be giving an error for that. Let me see. Import Prisma client / Prisma client. Prisma client. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna grab one from a different project. I think we got one right here. Let me make sure I didn't type anything. There we go. Save that. And we'll come back to this file. What do we get in? Still getting this error message, okay? And find and so I tell you what, let me see something. Console .log collections. Make sure I ran DB push into migrations again. Give me 1 second. First, here's generate. Okay, and I'm gonna stop this one too. And we'll go npm run dev. There we go. All right, give it a minute. There we go. So I must have forgot to run a migration and restart the server. So that's my apologies on that. But it's all good though. We're good now. So the next thing I wanted to see is I want to see if it's showing the collection count or anything about the collections in the terminal. Yep, and I can see it right here. So and we don't have any collections in our database just yet. So that is absolutely perfect. So now what I want to do is, if there is a collection in our database, then obviously I want to display it onto the screen. So outside of this purple curly bracket, that way we're still within the player list function. Just press enter, and I'm going to bring this down so you can see it a little better. Let's type in return, And what we want to return is collections.map, because we want to map over those collections, and we want to display a collection. And you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going with collection. You can name it item or card or player, whatever works for you. And what I'm going to pass in is the player card that we just created. And the key is going to be collection ID. And what I want to pass into it is collection. And we'll name collection. And we'll give it a self-closing tag. Now, obviously, we're not going to see anything just yet because there isn't anything in our database to display, and that's okay. But what I do want to do for right now is the player card. I want to go ahead and pass in collection. And then I want to show, because we're going to add a player into the database and we want to just see this come onto the screen. So just for right now, I'm going to go collection.name. That way we can display the player's name in addition to player card onto the screen once we add a player. So inside of, let's go ahead and close out that Prisma Studio. I think we stopped the terminal. I'm pretty sure we did. So in another terminal, not the one that's currently running, let's type in the command npx Prisma Studio and then press enter. And you see it is now on the screen, and I'm gonna close this one out and go back to my private browser. And let's add in a collection. So the first one, I'm gonna name Jace, of course, and jersey number, we're gonna say number 56. We'll say he got 5 plays, he plays football, and we don't have to worry about creating that or any of those things. So let's just hit save. I think because I've touched it, it's going to force me to. Yep. So discard that one. Sorry about that. I'm going to go Jace, jersey number 56, plays of 12, and we'll say he plays the sport of football. And let's just hit save. So now we have a collection or a player in our database. So if we go back to our localhost 3000 and refresh the screen, you see it now says the player name, and his name is Jace, J-A-C-E, and it's the player card. So now that we have this working, we can begin to style our card a little bit. And as you can see, this is the card that we have. It's probably not the most eloquent looking card, but it serves the purpose. What we have is a React icon, and we gave what we have is a card. We started with the user React icon and we gave it a border. We have the user's name, the sport they play, their jersey number, and the amount of plays that they had. So let's go to our player card. We'll start there first, and let's start to give this a little bit of styling. So we can just close out the terminal for right now, and we can remove this div. And we're going to add another div. We're going to add another div. I'm going to put the mouse over here. And within it, within this div, we're going to give it a class name, and we'll say flex item center. We'll say flex of 1, a padding of 4. We'll say select none border, and we'll go rounded, and I would like for it to be rounded at large. We'll set the border to be a primary color, and we'll set it to 10 so it's light. And on hover, we want the background to be primary of 30. That way it's a little more pronounced, and we'll make it cursor pointer. That way the mouse is appropriate as it hovers over the card. And for right now, let's just go ahead and let's just see what it looks like. So I'm gonna go collection.name, and as you can see, this is what the card looks like. Hover BGPRIMARY. Yep. Okay. border, background, okay. And let's just refresh the screen. All right. And now we'll remove this collection name and we'll go div. So this first div is going to hold the React user icon and a link to redirect us to the collection ID page. So we'll go div and we'll go class name of flex, and we want the direction to be column. We want the item centered, and let's go justify center as well, and we'll go a width of 10 and a height of 10. And margin right of 4. And now within it, I'm going to bring in a link so that we could be redirected to the individual collection screen. So the href for this is going to be, we'll use temporal literals because we'll need to dynamically pass in the ID. So we're going to go /collection /$ brackets, and then we'll go collection .id, and let's give this a class name for a little bit of styling first. We'll go class name and we'll say relative block border. We want the border to be primary 10, and we'll say rounded of full and a padding of 1. And I'm going to put in, we'll say fi user so that we could bring in the React icon, and let's style the icon a little bit. So we'll say the margin, we'll set it to auto. We'll set the object to cover the space that we just created, rounded full, not curl, but full. And after object cover, let's go with a rounded of full. We'll say a height of 6, a width of 6, and we'll say the text, so the color of it will be primary, and let's set it to 80. Primary /80. Oh, we need to close this. That'll help. Okay, and there. Now you see that React icon. And let's make sure that the routing is set up correctly. So inside of the website directory, let's create a new folder named collection. Inside of collection, let's add a new folder named bracket, or excuse me, open bracket ID, close bracket. And then inside of it, let's add a file named page.js. And let's just make sure it's working. We'll come back and set the params later. So we'll use the RFC template. We'll change the name to single collection or single player or player collection. No, let's say single collection to keep it consistent. Let's hit save. We can close this out. Back at the player card, if we click on the name, or excuse me, the icon, you see that we're redirected to the single collection page. And equally important, you see the ID of the collection in the URL. So that means that it is routing appropriately. So we're going to go back to the home screen so we can continue to build out the player card, but the routing is working correctly. It's displaying from the database, so things are certainly moving in the right direction. So underneath this link and underneath this div, let's add another div. And we're going to set the class name to flex1 and padding left of 1. And what we're looking to build out with this particular div is just to add in the collection name, or inside of this div, I should say. We're going to house another div first. The first one is going to hold the collection name within an opening and closing div tag. And then within this div, we're going to add another one underneath the name div that's going to hold the jersey number and the player number. Oh, and also that first div is going to have the sport icon. So let's go ahead and create the first div first. So we'll go div, we'll go class name, we'll go font of medium, we'll go flex, we'll say justify between, and we'll give it a margin bottom of 1. And let's just pass in the collection name to see it on screen. Not class name, but name. Hit save. And there you see the player's name. And then underneath it, we want to pass in the sport icon, or we want to pass in what sport the player is playing. And I gave it a little bit of color so that it's not just the word football or soccer or whatever. We want it to have a dynamic background based on the sport that the user is going with. So inside of the player card directory, inside of components, let's add a file named sportname.js, and we'll make this a client component. We'll say RFCE template, change the name of it to sport name, and then inside of this we want to pass in we're going to pass in the name. So let's just go ahead and name this, let's just pass in sport. And if we, what this is going to allow us to do is pass in a sport, and then it's going to basically read whatever sport it is. We want to dynamically display a color based on the sport that the user selected. And then we'll come back and kind of label that out or build this out. But for right now, let's just get something on the screen. So we're going to say sport name, and we're going to say sport is going to be equal to collection.sport, and we'll hit save. And obviously we can't see anything just yet because we kept it as a we need to add a little more information to it in order to display it on the screen. So we have the player card, we have the sport, we have collection.sport, which is coming from the collections that we're displaying here. So we'll say sport name, and we can remove this. Actually is not going to be a client component because we're just going to use a see, there it is on the screen now. We're just going to use a conditional statement, or I guess, yes, we're going to use a conditional statement to say, hey, if it's this, then this, if it's that, then that, if it's that, then that, and then we'll have a break. So some good old school JavaScript for those programmers that remember those days and starting out with JavaScript. So I'm going to start by creating a variable named background color, and then I'm going to create a switch statement, and let's just add in the ability to make sure that everything goes to lowercase. So we'll say to lowercase, and then outside of it, inside of the switch statement, we want to say if the case is football, then we want the background color to be, we'll say BG green, and we'll make it 300, make it a little lighter, and then we'll say break, and then we'll say case if it is basketball. Then we want the background color to be orange, BG orange dash 300, and then break. Yeah, that is to be safe. And we'll go case if it is baseball. We want the background color to be, we'll say blue, BG blue 300, and we'll say case, and then we want the next one to be soccer, SOCCER. We'll say background color is equal to, we'll make this one purple, PLE, make it 300. Break, and we'll say case. Last one to be track and field. You know, my baby plays track and field, or runs track, I should say. No, what am I thinking about? Yep. and then we'll say background color be BG gray 300, and we'll say break. And then we need to set a default, so we'll say default. We'll say background color is BG red 300. Okay, and now within this div, in order to give it the dynamic ability to display, I'm gonna go with pass in the sport, and we'll say class name, and we'll need to make this temporal literals because we're going to pass in some information dynamic. So we'll start by saying inline block, and we'll give a padding of 1. We'll go rounded large. Actually, I'm going to go rounded medium. And here we're going to say background color, and that's what will be passed in dynamically. I want the text to be white, and I want the text to be extra small. So if we save it, we see that football now has a background color of the green 300 that we set it to, and it's not just the regular football. And we'll close that out. Why my hover isn't working. Hover BG primary PRIMARY. Yeah, I'll come back to that. That's fine. So we have the sport name working. So now what I want to display is the jersey number underneath, and I'm also going to have the plays ran right here. So what we'll do is we'll come out of the div that we just created, but still within the flex 1 div. So not within this div, but within this div. So we'll go here, and we'll go div. We'll give it a class name of text. We want this to be small. Text gray 600 should look good. Flex item center, and we'll go justify between, and we'll give it a width of full. We'll hit save, and let's just say jersey. No, we won't have to worry about that. So now what we'll want to do is I'm going to create 2 separate components, one for the jersey number and one for the plays ran. So I'll create a file within the player card of jersey, JERSCY number.js, and we'll go RFCE. We'll go jersey, JERSCY number, and we'll pass in number. And while we're at it, let's just go ahead and create one more file. We're going to name it plays ran, plays-ran.js, RFCE, plays ran. And then what we're going to pass into plays ran is plays. And just hit save. Close that out. So the first one is jersey number, and this is the number, and it's going to be collection.number. Was it number or jersey? I think it's jersey. I'm pretty sure it's jersey, JERSCY. Number would have been too inconvenient. And hit save, and you see jersey number listed there. So now we need to bring in plays ran, and in plays ran we want to pass plays, and we want to go collection.plays. Hit save, and we see it listed there. So now we'll start. We can close out this Prisma file. We can close out the page.js for now. So within the jersey number, we're going to keep this one pretty simple. All I really want to do is just show the player's jersey number, and I just wanted to add a icon next to it. You don't have to do this. This was just strictly just something I just wanted to do, just to give it a little more life, so to speak. And for this one, I'm going to use a React FA icon, and I'm going to use a shirt, t-shirt. Yep. And we can remove this div, and we can pass in a FA t-shirt. Let's give it a class name of text gray 300, and let's set the height to 4, the width to 4, and that should be good enough. And hit save. We see the jersey on screen, and if we pass in number, we see the number right underneath it. You know what? I think I'm gonna keep it like that. I know in the original one they were flex laid next to each other, but I'm just gonna keep it like that. And then I might change it though. Now we want to update plays ran, and for this one, very similar to the last one, just gonna have a running icon to represent running. I do want to make it centered though. So let's go class name, class flex column item center. It's probably already pretty much centered, but that just confirms it. All right, and I'll actually copy this because I think it's going to be similar to this one, but we'll see. So we'll bring in import FA running. There we go. And we'll remove this div, and we'll go paste in what I just had. Let's go FA running. Let's go class name H4 with 4, and I think I made the text gray 300. Close it out, and then underneath it, just type plays. Hit save, and boom, there you can see the amount of plays ran. Now I think I said between. Let's see what a round looks like. I think I want to go with that look a little versus the other one. Can always change it back to something else if need be, but I'm gonna go with that one instead. And let me see if I can fix this hover effect real quick. I may come back to it. Let's go hover, BG. Let's go slate 200 just to get something. There we go. All right, so now let me change that to primary. P-R-I-M-A-R-Y. Why it's not picking up my P-R-I-M-A-R-Y? It's not picking up that primary. That's fine. It's okay. I'm not gonna worry about it right now. So we do get a hover effect with the slate. It's just not picking up our primary color for right now. But okay. So nevertheless, that wasn't anything detrimental to the functionality of the website. So we're still good. But for right now, we have our card displayed on the screen. We have the ability to see the information. Now, let's go ahead and work on the ability to add a card or add a player from the actual website and not just from the Prisma Studio. So if we click on Add Player, we should be redirected to the new screen, which is going to be in the app directory inside of website. You should have a folder named new, and that's the page that we're going to work on for the next X amount of minutes or so. So what we'll need to do is start out by giving a little bit of padding to the screen, and then we're going to bring in a form in order to, and just so you can see what I'm talking about. When you click on it, we're going to start by giving some padding to set the padding layout up top. We're going to add in a header text. That way it'll be a reusable component. And then we're going to have the form, which will be listed here. We'll have the ability to enter in the name, the jersey number. We just added, I just wanted to do something a little different than normal typing in a jersey number. So a calculator style jersey number. the ability to add plays just by toggling up, or you could type it in directly. And then for the sport, we're going to select the buttons. We're going to select the sport by this and then click submit. And we're going to walk through this together, but I just wanted you to get a visual of what we're going to build. So let's start by setting the padding on the screen first. So we'll start with a section, and the section we'll give it a class name, and we're going to give it a padding of 6. And within it, we're going to have, we're not going to have a div. We're going to have the box, Jason. So we'll go box. It's bringing the box. Let's go new page just to make sure that it's working properly. And as you can see, the padding from the section and the box has our layout appropriately laid out. So now within this box, I want to add some text to let the user know that they're on the new page. And I probably should also add a little back button. So we'll do that as well. So first, let's go with adding in the heading text. And I want to make this a reusable component. So inside of the components directory, let's add a file named heading-text.js. And we'll go RFCE just to get something on the screen. We'll go heading text, save the file. And let's go heading text. Save it, and you see that we now have heading text on the screen. And you could have typed this directly into the page, but I like to just get in the habit of making things more reusable. That's really how you should be coding anyway. So for right now, let's just go ahead and get the text onto the screen. So we'll say title, and we'll say add player. And description, CRIPTION, we'll say fill out the form below to add a player. We'll click save, and we probably won't see anything because we haven't passed it in yet. That's fine. So now let's go back to the heading text file. Let's pass in what we just created, which was a title and description. Let's hit save. And let's remove this div and replace it. Let's give it a class name of flex. And I want the flex direction to be column. I'm not going to give any space. You can if you want to. So just so we can see what we have, I'm going to pass in an H1 with title and a paragraph with description. Hit save. And as you can see, we now have add player, fill out the form below to add a player. So now let's just give the H1 a little bit of styling. So we'll go, we won't do that. Let's go class name. Let's go text, title, font. That way it's pronounced as a title. We'll go the font to be medium, so it's not as bold as the header. So we'll go text XL on small devices. On medium devices, we'll go text 2XL. On extra large, or I should say large, we're going to say text 3XL. And we'll set the text color to gray, GRAY. And let's just make it 800. Save. And now you see it is now updated. So now let's just give some styling to our paragraph tag. So we'll go class name of leading relaxed. And we'll go text gray 300. And we'll set the font to be extra light. And we'll say tracking of tight. Let's save this file. And you see it is now updated. We'll make it a little darker, 500. There you go. All right, so now we can close out the heading text file, and we have reusable heading text should we need to use it in any other file or page within our website. So now what I want is the actual form, and I'm gonna make this a reusable component because this is still server-side rendering. But because I have so much functionality on the form, I want to just make it client-side, but didn't have to. just total preference. So inside of the components directory, inside of the directory named forms, which is inside of components, let's add a file named new player form.js. And this is going to be, we can close this. This is going to be a client side component. So we'll just say use client, and then we'll say RFCE new player form. Let's save it and then go back to the page, and then underneath the heading closing tag, let's add new player form. Save the file, and you can see the player form is now listed here on screen. So we will, this will take a little bit of time to build this form out. Like I said, it is a little more involved than a traditional form, but we'll walk through it step by step and make it pretty simple. So first we'll start by setting the form to be use client, which we've already done. And in this, we're going to also need use state to manage the state of our different functions that we have. Excuse me. We're going to need a few other inputs, but for right now, the main ones that I want to bring in that we're not already using, I want to bring in use router, and make sure you're bringing that in from Next Navigation. And then I also want to use React Hot Toast. I've been using both of them, React Hot Toast and React Toastify. They do have different advantages and disadvantages. It just depends on how much customization you want to do and different things like that. But I'm just going to use React Hot Toast for this project. Optional, it doesn't impact the project a whole lot. It's just a nice touch to have to let the user know that you have that they've successfully done something or they haven't done something correctly. So go ahead and grab the npm for React Hot Toast, and it's just npm react-hot-toast. Press enter, and it shouldn't take long to install. And then once it's installed, just bring in import toaster, and then toast, and it's coming from React Toast. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and save this file, and first thing I want to do is let's create the function that we're going to run in order to create a player. Normally this would be handled by an API, but because we're using server actions, we're not going to create a traditional backend API, but yet we're going to do everything in the server action folder. So if you don't mind, inside of the root directory in the lib directory, let's add a file named actions. And then inside of actions, let's add a folder name, a file named new player.js. And this is going to be a server-side client file. So you want to start back. This is strictly going to be ran on the server, and you want to make sure you're calling that out with Next.js. So we're going to, now how we said use client, we're going to say use server. And then the only thing we need to import into this file is Prisma. And just make sure it's coming from .. because this should already be coming from the Prisma file within the lib directory. And then now we want to create the function in order to create a player. So we're going to go export async function. And feel free to name yours whatever you like. I'm just going to name it create player. And we want to pass in event data. This could have been form data, whatever works for you. I'm just going with event data today. And then inside of that function, we want to add a try catch block. And inside of the try catch block, first thing we want to do is grab the event data. So we're going to destructure the name, the jersey, the plays, and sport from event data. So we'll set it equal to event data. And then underneath that, we want to take that data and we want to create a new player. And we'll need to call Prisma. So we know that this is going to be something that we'll have to wait on. And we're going to use the Prisma function that we created in the lib directory. We want to grab the player model, which is next. And then we want to say .create, which is one of those Prisma functionalities that we get access to. That's going to allow us to create a player based on this model. And the data that we want to pass in is the name, the jersey, the plays, and the sport, all of which we just destructured from the event data. And then outside of that function, that new player function that we just created, we want to return new player. That way, and we could have done, because this is server side, we could have done revalidation or redirect, but I'm going to handle it through the client side because I want to send a toast notification and I want to do a few other things. That's going to give it a little more client-side activity than what you can get on the server. But you could do it either way, whatever works for you. And then inside of the catch portion of the try-catch block, I just want to do console.log. We want to log the error. So we'll say new player error. And we'll say plus, and we'll go error. And then we'll go throw new error. That way, we'll get an error. We'll not only get the toast notification, but we'll also get a error from the server as well too. Failed to create player is what we'll send back. So we can go ahead and close this file, and as long as I didn't make any typos, which it doesn't appear that I did, we shouldn't need this file anytime soon. And then what we want to do is go back to the new form, and we want to begin to add in the functionality in order to get this form to work. So first things first, I'm going to style the form, and then we'll bring in or break down each piece separately. So I'm gonna close out the hot toast so we can at least see the form on the page. And I'm gonna go with remove the div tag and replace it with a form, and we'll go class name. We'll give it a little margin top so that it's not so close to the top of 4. We'll go flex, and we want to set direction to column. That way all of the items within the form are up and down. And then we'll give it a little bit of a gap of, we'll say gap of 4, and we'll set cursor pointer. And before I hit save, I'm just going to go div, and inside of the div, I'm going to create a span. What I want is just to say enter the player's name. And you don't have to have that. It's strictly optional. I'm going to go class name text of primary. P-R-I-M-A-R-Y. Let me see something. This is going to drive me crazy. I'm not terribly concerned with it, but P-R-I-M-A-R-Y. Nope, I'll come back to it though. Just make sure I ain't tripping. Nope. All right, so that's okay. So we'll have a span that lets the user know this is where you're entering the player's name. And I'm going to add a input. And we want to bring in, we want this to be a capital I because I want to use the import from nextui. And then we'll just close it out. And then we'll put a placeholder just so we can see something on screen. And then I'll hit save. And then now you see the enter the player's name, and we have the input listed right here. So in order to grab our functionality and bundle it up and send it over, I'm going to use some front-end functionality to kind of help us out with this to make it a little simpler and cleaner, if you will. So first I'm going to use, I want to use useState to capture the state of the player's name. So we'll go const name, and we'll go set name is equal to useState, and it's going to start empty. And then we'll need to create a function to handle the change of the player's name. So we'll say handle name change function. And then we'll go const handle name change, and we'll set it equal to event. And inside of it, we'll say set new name, and we'll go event.target, target.value. That way we're capturing the value of that input. And then we'll need to also create, we'll need to pass this value into our input. So we'll say value is going to be VALUE is going to be equal to name, because that's the value, that's what this is going to be holding, the name. And then on change, we want to call the, we want to call this handle name change function. And then we'll hit save, and then that's going to care for the handle name change, or handle the name as we enter it, excuse me. Next up, we're going to want to store, or we're going to want to have the player's jersey number. And this is going to be a little more code than what we had previously, but it's okay. We'll walk through it. So we have the div inside of that div, or excuse me, we have one div inside of the form. Outside of that div, we want to add another div. And we can actually copy this span, because the span is going to be very similar. Instead of enter the player's name, we'll say enter the player's jersey number. And that's going to represent that span. And then now what we want is we want to have a input to allow us to enter in the player's jersey number, and we want the design of it to be kind of like a calculator. So inside of the root directory, inside of components, we have a folder named forms. Inside of forms, let's add a file. Let's name this file jersey, Jerscy, number input.js. This will absolutely be a client-side file, so we'll say use client RFCE. We'll say jersey number input. Let's save it. And what we want to pass into this is a couple values. The first value is going to be coming from the actual, it's going to be the actual value itself. And we're going to capture the value from this file. And then we're also going to pass in a onChange handler. That's going to come from what we just created. And we'll kind of walk through it together. So first is going to be value. And then the next one is going to be onChange. And we can save it. And if we go back to the new player form, let's bring in this new component that we just created. And it is jersey number input. And what we want to pass into it, remember we gave it two values. The first value was value itself, and that's going to be the jersey number. And what we want to name, or what we're using for the jersey number, is it's going to be the actual jersey number itself. But we'll come back to that. But I do want to go ahead and pass in the onChange handler, and that is going to be handle name change, because that's going to be the function that it uses when we get ready to handle the name change of the jersey. So with this, we're actually in a very good space to go ahead and work on that, work on the jersey number. So this actually isn't going to be handle name change. This is going to be handle jersey number change that we haven't created just yet. But that's okay. So we'll just go ahead and remove this one. And then now that we'll go ahead and add in those functions to capture the value first, which will be done in state. And then we'll need to create the function that's going to handle the jersey number change. So first we'll go const, and then we'll go jersey number, and then we'll say set jersey number, and we want to set it equal to use state, and we'll make it a string. We could make it 0, but it's okay. And then now we have it, that's going to be our value. And then onChange, we'll say handle jersey number change, and we'll create a function that can handle it. So we'll say const handle and keep it consistent, jersey number change, and we'll pass in the value, and then we'll say set jersey number, and of course this is going to be value, some good old React. And then right here we'll pass in, make sure I get this right, handle jersey number change, handle jersey number change, there we go, and we'll hit save. And then now we see we have this listed on the screen. So now that we have this this input cared for, we can go ahead and focus on creating the jersey number functionality. So we'll go back to the jersey number input, that file. We don't need to import anything else at this point, but we will need to create a few more functions within this in order to make it work. So the first one is going to be to handle the button click, and this is going to just allow us to enter numbers visually and concatenate them so that they are together. So we'll name this function handle button click, and what we're passing in is a number. And inside of it, we'll give it an on change, and on change, what we want it to update the value. Actually, we want to go value plus number. And what this is basically allowing us to enter multiple numbers for the jersey. Because if you didn't have the plus number and concatenate it, then it basically would just add the numbers and not bring the numbers together. Like 22, it would just add them together. So function to handle button clicks, and then we'll need one to handle input change. So we'll go const, and we'll go handle input change, and this will handle an event, and then we'll go on change, we'll go event.target gt.value, and we'll hit save. And then the last function we'll need is clear input, clear input function. And I'm gonna go const handle clear. We don't need to pass anything in it. And then we'll just say on change, boom, just be clear. All right, so that should care for all the functions that we need within this particular component. So we'll remove the jersey number input so that we're starting with fresh divs, and we'll start with the input. And it doesn't have to be from React UI or NextUI, excuse me. We'll say the type is text. The placeholder will be jersey number. Hit save so we can see something. Perfect. Then we'll say the value is value. And we'll give this an on change handler. On change, yep. What we want is we want to handle the input change on this one. That way, as we're making changes to the number, this can handle that input change. And then let's just give a little bit of styling to this one. We'll go border gray of 300. We'll go rounded of medium. Yep, medium. We'll go padding on the X of 3, padding on the Y of 2, just so you can see what it looks like. And then we'll go margin bottom of 4, just so there's a little bit of space. All right. And then now that we have the input on screen, this is where we're going to see the jersey number like this. Now we want to add the grid of numbers so that we can see those on screen. So we'll go div, we'll give it a class name of grid, we'll go grid columns 3, and we'll give it a gap of 2. And what we want is we want to use a little bit of JavaScript to map over these numbers and display them in this grid layout as a button. And that's where the handle button click function will come into play that we just created. So we'll start with the array first. Zero. And then outside of this bracket, we'll go .map. Remember, anytime we do, I'm sorry I didn't say put the open brackets on the screen, but remember, anytime we're running JavaScript directly within the components, we want to make sure we have these brackets in place. So outside of the array of numbers, we want to go .map. And we want to map over and name each number and give it an index. And then we'll, inside of this component, we'll create the arrow function inside of this function, excuse me. Next, we want to create a button for each one of the numbers that we have listed here. And so just so that we can see it, I'm going to go ahead and put number, hit save. And now you see we have a grid of numbers listed on the screen. So now we want to give it a little bit of life first. So we'll give it a key and an index. And we'll say the type is a button. And we'll go give it an on-click handler. And of course, the on-click handler, we want to call the function handle button click. And we want to pass in a number. And then now let's style it a little bit. Actually, we should be able to hit save and see the number appear. Yep. So we see the number appear. Now we just need a way to clear it out. So I'm just going to refresh the screen for right now. But let's style the buttons first. So we'll give the button a class name and we'll give it border. We'll make the border gray and 10 of 300. We'll go rounded medium. We'll go padding on the X of 3, padding on the Y of 2. And on hover, I'm going to set the background gray to 100. So when we hover, we get a little color change there. There we go. And now I just need to add the ability to clear. So outside of this button, we have the button closing tag. And then we have a little bit of JavaScript. And then we want one more button listed here. And we can go ahead and name this one clear. So we see it on screen. First, let's give it the functionality that it needs. So we'll say type and we'll set it a type of button. We'll set on click and we want to call handle clear. So we'll pass in on click. We want it to clear. And let's give it a class name of border. Let's go border gray. Actually, we could just copy this for the most part. It should be the same. Save a little bit of typing. I know we're typing a lot. Okay, so we'll go 1, clear, boom. 22, concatenated together, perfect, clear, boom. And I'm gonna get this a class name of cursor, C-U-R, pointer, and hit save. There we go. That's a little better. All right. So that should care for the jersey number input, and we're capturing the value and we're setting it the jersey number. And I know we need to create the handle submit function and use the create player functionality that we created as a server action, but we'll come back to that in a moment. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and continue to build out the form. So now that we have the jersey number input, we can come outside of this div, and we have 2 more inputs to add. So we have 2 more inputs to add. The first one, well, first let's add another div, and we can grab this span and copy it. And this particular div is going to have the ability to see the total plays ran by the player. If you know anything about Little League sports, and I know this really is about the coding functionality, but in Little League sports, you have to capture how many plays each player has ran. So this is just a quick, easy way to keep track of how many players or how many plays the players ran. So we'll say enter the amount of plays by the player, and we'll hit save. And we have it listed there. And then we want to have the ability to enter in the plays, and we're going to do the exact same way that we did before. We're going to create it as a separate component. So we're going to go plays-ran input.js, and we'll make this a client-side component. We go rfce plays ran input. We'll hit save, and just like we did with the jersey number input, we're going to have to pass in multiple arguments into this component, but it's going to be the exact same way. It's going to be the value and then on change. That way we can capture the value and capture the on change. So this one is not going to be as involved as the jersey number, because if you recall, we made a little simple dummy down calculator style layout. This one won't be nearly as complex. Matter of fact, if you look at it, it's just a input with a decrement and increment on the right, and I centered the plays. I centered the title text right here, but you could just leave it as is, whatever works for you. So we're going to make I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and get it on screen first. So let's go plays ran input, and we're going to go value of and we haven't created it yet, and we'll go on change. Haven't created it just yet either. So the value for this one, it's going to be very similar to what we did before. So we'll just come up and we're going to capture it in state. So we'll go const and we'll name it plays, and we'll say set plays, and we're going to set it equal to use state. And I'm going to make this one 0. Could have kept it as a string, but I'm just going to make it 0 just to change it up a little bit. And then the value that we want to pass into this, just like we did with the other one, is going to be plays. And then the on change that we need to create, just like we created one to handle the jersey number change, we're going to need to create one to handle the plays ran. So I'll come under this one and we'll say handle player plays ran, and we'll name it const handle plays change, and we're just going to pass in the value, and then we'll say set plays and we'll make it value. And then the on change, we want to pass in what we just created, handle plays change, handle plays change, and just hit save. And then you see we now have the plays ran input listed at the bottom. So we'll go back to the plays ran input, and let's go ahead and get ready to give it a little bit of love and attention. And the first thing we want to do is create the ability to increment and decrement. So we'll say increment and decrement functionality. So the first one will be increment const increment plays is equal to, and this one is just going to be on change and the value +1. So whatever it currently is, if we increment it, we want it to go up 1. And obviously, if we're decrementing, decrement, we want to say const decrement plays is equal to, if I can see, on change value -1. And that's it. So now everything else is just going to be a little bit of styling. So we can just remove the plays ran verbiage so that we only have our divs left, and we'll go class name, and we'll go flex item center padding top of 4, a width of full. And then in it, the first one will be the minus button because that's the one that's on the left. So we'll just go button. And I'm not going to use one from nextui, but you can if you want. I think it still looks okay, but I'm just going to not use it. It's not that serious. So we'll go button. We'll go type of button. And then we'll give it an on-click handler. We know to need it. And because it's on the left and minus, we're going to give it the decrement functionality. And then now let's just style it a little bit. If I could talk, we'll give it padding on the X of 3, a little bit of padding on the Y of 1. We'll go rounded MD, a background of gray 200, and we'll go hover BG gray 400 and hit save. Let's see what we get. See now, there we go. We have that on screen. So now outside of this button, let's add the input next. And the input is going to be a type, which is a number, or a type of number, excuse me. The value, we want it to be the value that we actually see on screen. On change, excuse me. As it changes, what we want is we want the on change handler to run, and we want to parse the numbers, P-A-R-S-E, parse int, the numbers to make sure that they are an integer, because that's, and I should have done like yep or some sort of form validation just to make sure, but because it's just a simple CRUD project, I didn't think you probably wanted to have that much code for something so simple. But this is where validation would be key, because it will make sure that we're passing in an integer. But we're just going to use some JavaScript and do it right here. So we'll say e.target.value. And remember, the value could be 0. So if there is no value there, what we want to see is 0. And then we'll go class name and we'll say border gray 500. We'll go rounded none. And we'll go padding on the X of 3. And we'll say text center and give it a width of 4. Let's save it. So now you see that we're able to decrement it, and it is going to 0 because we've decremented and we haven't added the plus to increment it. So to add it, let's just go ahead and copy the minus button. Let's change the minus to a plus, and instead of decrement plays, let's just change it to increment plays. Hit save, and now you see we can increment and decrement, and it's going to save that number in the state so that represents the number of plays that the player ran. So we have that one cared for. It's a little too much padding there. Let's change it to 2. We can just make it 1. There. So now the padding is set to 1, and this is our form. And then last but not least, we want the ability to select what sport the team member or the player is playing. Obviously, you can make this whatever you want, and I chose to hard code these, but you could always dynamically code them where they can be entered. That way you can have more than one, or that way you can set whatever type of game or plays you want. But I just decided to hard code it, but feel free to do it any way that you like. But let's just go ahead and work on the sport selection input. So we'll minimize our deployed version of the project, and let's just go back to the page.js. Let's go back to the new form, and outside of this particular div, let's create another div, and let's give it a, actually we're not going to give it anything just yet. Let's go ahead and we can close that. Let's paste this in, and let's say enter the select the player sport. Select the player's sport below, and hit save. and you see we have the message right there on the screen. And then we want to create the sport selection input the same way we did previously. So we'll, inside of the forms directory, let's type in sport selection input.js. And just to get something on the screen, we'll go RFCE sport selection input. Let's save it. And with this one, we want to pass in just on select, because there isn't, we need the brackets there, on select, because there isn't any changes other than us selecting the sport that the user is playing or played. So we'll just go with on select and hit save. And then let's go back to the new player form and let's go with sport selection input. And we know that we need to pass in some additional things that we haven't created just yet. They're going to be, well, for this one, we're only going to need one, and it's just going to be on select, and we'll need to create a function that we could pass to it. So up top, I'm going to create a function that just sport selection function to select sport. And we'll go const handle sport selection. And this is going to be an asynchronous function, and we'll pass an event. And then we'll say, actually, this isn't asynchronous, this is a regular function. Clean it up a little bit. And then inside of it, we'll just go set select sport that we haven't created yet. That's the reason it didn't auto-populate. So let's go ahead and create the state to capture it. So we'll say select sport, select sport. No, it's select, set select sport. Sorry, set select sport. And we'll just set it equal to use state. And that'll be that with that. And then now we can say set select sport, and we want it to be the event. Actually, let's make this sport out of consistency. Yep. So we're passing in a sport, and I know I need to pass in handle sport selection. Handle sport selection. There we go. I just hit save. All right, so just showing the input. Set select sport. That's there. Select the sport. Yep, that's there. And then actually this should be handle select sport. Yep. Everything looks good. Yep. All right. So now that we have this updated, and let's go ahead and let's build out what this is going to look like. So basically what we have is a form that is going to allow us to select the sport that the user participated in. And I have them laid out kind of like little buttons versus just a traditional select drop down. So in order to make this happen, we'll need client-side functionality. So let me go ahead and set this to use client, and then use state. And I think that's all the inputs we'll need. And then we'll need to create an array of sports. And this array is going to have the sports that the team member can participate in. So the first one will be football. We'll go baseball. We'll go basketball. We'll go soccer, CS, and then we'll go track and field, and I kept them capitalized so they're more visually appealing. And we also, if you recall, we changed all of this to lowercase when we used the switch statement to dynamically display the background color of the sport. So now we'll need to pass in the ability to select the sport. So we'll say selected sport, and then we'll say set selected sport, and we'll set it equal to use state. You could have set a default if you wanted to, but I just want to keep the default empty. So that way the user will be forced to make a selection. Excuse me. Now we need a function to handle the sport selection. So we'll go const handle sport select. I want to make a selection. Pass in the sport. And we'll say set selected sport. And we'll pass in the sport. And then we'll say on select sport. That way we'll make sure it's being captured once we select it. And I'm going to remove this div and replace it with a div and give it a class name of grid. And we'll say columns 2 on small devices, and on large devices or medium devices, we'll give it a grid column of 3. We'll say width of full, and let me say large as well. Large, let's go with grid columns of 5. That way when it's on large, all 5 blocks are equally displayed. So now I want to map over this sports array and display these names onto the screen. And to see them, I'm going to use a button. Excuse me. So we'll go sports.map, and I'm going to name it sport and give it an index for our key. And then inside of it, for each sport, I want to create a button. And we're going to pass in sport just so we can see something on the screen. Hit save. You see our 5 sports listed here. And if I maximize it, they are in a grid layout there. So we'll go ahead and go back to the smaller view. First, we'll say the key is index. Then we'll say the type is a button. Then we'll say on click. We want to pass in handle sport select. Yep, make sure that. Yep. And then what we want to pass into this is sport. Then we want to give it a class name, and this class name, we want it to be dynamic, because if we make a selection, we want the user to have the ability to see which button or sport they've selected. So we'll go class name, and we'll give it temporal literals, and we'll go border gray of 300. We'll go rounded medium, padding of 3. We'll say hover background will be gray, and we'll set this to 100. And then now we'll get a little dynamic JavaScript. We'll say $, and in the brackets we'll say selected sport is equal to sport. Then we'll say the background is going to be purple 200, or it'll be nothing. Make sure I got that right. Yep, that looks good. No errors. Let's hit save, and let's give it a little gap. Let's give it gap of 2. There we go. So now you see it now highlighted. Looks good. And if we go back to the new player form, sports selected, you see that we have you see that we have a beautiful form now laid out and listed here. So it's starting to come together pretty good. So now what we want to do is we want to add, let me add a button, because we'll need a button and a way to submit this. So I'm gonna type in button and we'll say submit. I'm gonna make this dynamic in a minute, but for right now, just so we can have something on the screen, and we'll give it a class name. Let's go background, purple. Let's go background gray. Let's go 700. Padding of 2. Let's go rounded, medium, text white. All right, and we'll say hover BG gray 200. There we go. All right, so that'll be our button, and this is our form. So now we need to add in the functionality to submit this information to our database. And in order to do so, we're going to use the handle submit function. And I'm also going to add in some functionality for us to know that the page or that the input has been submitted. So we'll get like a little loading or submitting animation to go along with it. So first, let's go ahead and create the ability to submit the player. And I'm going to name it const handle submit. And we'll go async for this. We're going to pass in the event. And we'll say event.prevent default, prevent the default. And then underneath it, we'll give it a try catch block. And inside of this try catch, we're going to, well, I tell you what, let me add in a little, we might as well just go ahead and take care of everything now. So the first state or the next state that I want to add is when we hit the submit button, I want to be able to capture where we are in the process of submitting. So we'll create a state variable named const and submitting, and then we'll say set submitting, and we'll set it equal to use state. And then obviously we're going to start in the false state because we're not submitting right now. And we're going to use this to help manage what our button and our form looks like as we change the state. So we'll start with the state of it being set to false. I also want to bring in React router so that we can be redirected back to the home screen. So we'll go const router is equal to use router. Yep, that looks good. And then now we'll come back to our handle submit function. And after we've prevented the default behavior, we'll go set submitting, and we'll set this to true. And then we'll go await, and we want to bring in the create player function, but we don't have to import it. If you begin to type in create player, you should see, and if you spelled it the exact same way, just type it in the same way you spelled it in the server action functionality. You should be able to import it, which makes it a lot easier. And you can see that we got a little warning right here with the wait, but that's okay. That'll clear itself up. And what we're going to pass in is the name, because that's what we're passing in as the event data. We're going to pass in the jersey. But remember, we want to parse this so that it is passed as an integer and not a float or any other number. It has to be an integer for Prisma. And what this is going to be is the jersey number that we created as a state variable. Then we want to pass in the plays. And then the sport, we want to use the selected sport variable, state variable that we created earlier. So we're going to say the sport is select sport. Let me make sure I got that right. Select sport. Yep. All right. Now just hit save. and we can add a little more information to it. So if everything goes well, we want to pass a toast notification to the users so they're aware, and we want to say success. And I'm not going to customize this. I'm just going to keep it as is. We'll say success player created successfully. And then underneath it, we'll go router.push. And we want to push the user back to the home page. And then finally, what I want to do is let's just reset the form. And this is really going to be for when we use this form to help us, or use some of the pieces of this to help us with some other functionality. But it's a good habit to just reset the form anyway. So we'll go set name. We want it to be empty again. We'll go set jersey number. We want it to be empty. We want set plays. We're going to pass in 0. Remember, we gave that a starting number of 0. And then we'll go set select sport. We're going to set it to empty as well. And then that cares for the try. And if we get an error, we're going to pass in a, we want to send a toast error back to the user, failed to add player. And then inside of this finally, we're going to go finally, and we're going to set submitting right there. We want to say set submitting. We want to change the state back to false, F-A-L-S-E. Sorry, F-A-L-S-E. Because remember, we set it to true, but finally, if everything goes well, we want to set submitting back to false. And then that should care for that. Now only thing we need to do is update our form, and inside of it, normally if we were doing server actions, we would add an action, but because we're using a little client-side functionality, we're going to call the on submit, and we're going to pass in the handle submit function. Make sure that's what I named it. Yep, pass in the handle submit function, and then that will take care of the form. And then with the button, I do want it to show loading, or want it to show a different message when the button is submitted. So inside of the button, let's go ahead and set disabled, and we want to set the disabled to submitting. And then inside the button, instead, we'll remove the submit word, and then we'll go with submitting. If it's submitting, then we'll go submit, which is what we had previously. And what I want to see is submitting. And you can make this anything you want. This is just for a better user experience. And it'll start out with submit. And then finally, what I want is I want the toaster, and I'm gonna put the position as top center. I know it was bottom right, but I'm gonna change it up a little bit. So now let's see if we have any errors, and we probably should have troubleshot a little more along the way. But let's just see if we get any errors. So I'm gonna go with Jada. Her jersey number is going to be 18. Let's say she did 4 plays, track and field, and let's hit submit. And we see it says submitting, and there you see it. You see we have Jada, track and field, her jersey number is 18, and she ran a total of 4 plays. And if you look in the console now, where we were trying to see if we were getting what we were getting back, and I believe this was in the page. I'm pretty sure this is in the page.js. You see that we want to see the collections. You see that we're passing in objects, and we're destructuring these objects in the player card. So perfect. That is working as designed. Now that we have the ability to see and create the player cards, let's go ahead and add in the functionality to update those player cards. So we know that if we click on the user name and the profile image, or the user icon image, it's going to redirect us to the single collection page. And this is where we'll be housing or we'll have the ability to update our user in addition to seeing the user's information. So if you recall with our main project, and I'm just going to go back to the home screen, if we clicked on one of the users or one of the players, it's going to redirect us to collection and ID. This is the exact same form that we previously had. It just has the user's information or the player's information default inside of it. That way we shouldn't have to create all of that information over again. We can kind of use some of that same, we don't have to create the form all over again. We can reuse some of the components in our update form card. But before we begin to update our form, let's go ahead and add in the backend functionality so that when we make the selection, instead of an API, we're going to use a server action to update the player. So we'll minimize the deployed site for right now. And inside of the root directory, inside of actions, let's add another file named updateplayer.js. And this is going to be a server code, so server file, excuse me. So we'll go use server and we'll go import Prisma, and it should be from .. if you recall from earlier. And then now we'll just create a asynchronous function, export async function, and we'll go update player, and then we'll go event data. And then inside of the event data, we'll just have a try catch block. But first, let's go ahead and just destructure this information. So we'll go name, jersey, plays, sport, and ID. And we'll go event data. Sorry. Yep. And then inside of the try catch, we'll go const updated player is equal to await. And we'll call that Prisma function. We'll leverage the player model and we'll use update. And then inside of it, first we have to have the where. We'll go where ID is equal to ID. And then we'll go data and we'll go name, jersey, plays, sport. And finally, we want to return updated player. And if we get an error, let's console.log error updating player, and we'll go error, and we'll also go throw new error. We'll go error plus error dot message. Hit save. All right, so we should be good with this simple function. Now we can go back to we'll close this out. We'll close this out. We can close out this page. Now we'll go ahead and close out all the open files so that only thing we have is the single collection page viewable in our text editor. If we go to website, if we go to our directory, go into the app directory, go to the website folder, click on collection, and inside of it, you should have a page.js file. So inside of this file, we'll need to do quite a bit of updating, in order to bring it to life, if you will. So first, I want to go ahead and set this to be a asynchronous page. This is going to be server-side code, and we're going to pass in params just to make sure that we are getting this ID inside of this function. So I'm going to go const ID is equal to params, and then what I want to display on the screen is the ID. So if we hit save, we see this ID that is on the page is the exact same ID that's in the URL. So that means that we're able to get that information on click from the URL from the URL onto our page. So now we want to use this same ID to find the player by that ID. So we'll go const player is equal to await Prisma dot player dot find unique UNIQUE, and we want to find unique where the ID is equal to ID. And now if we go player dot name, we see Jada. So we're seeing that we're able to get, hold on, I was trying to remove single collection. We see that we're able to get that the player's unique identifier, which is the ID, in the URL of the website, grab it from the URL using params, take that user's ID, and then use it to use Prisma and find the ID of the player based on that ID. So perfect. That is working absolutely as designed. So before we go ahead and add in the rest of the functionality, let's just go ahead and style the layout a little bit. We'll go with a section, and we're going to give it some padding of 6. We're going to add the box, and inside of the box we'll give it a div, and we'll go class name, we'll go flex item centered, and we'll go justify between, and margin bottom of 6. Now what this is, and I should have explained it first, this is going to be this back arrow, and we're also going to have the ability to delete the player from this particular single page nav bar. We could have made it a separate component, but decided to just keep it simple and keep it all within the same layout. So first we'll add a link, and it's just going to take us back to the home, and we'll give we probably ought to style this, well, let's add a FI arrow OW of left, and we can just make it left, and then we'll just type back, and let's see what we get. You see that we have the back arrow and the word back. Now to style it a little bit, let's just give it a class name. Let's go flex item centered and hit save. And we see we have it there. We'll give it a gap of 1. Hit save. There we go. So now we have that. And the next thing I want to do is I want to add a delete trash icon here, but I'm not going to worry about the delete functionality just yet. But I'm going to go ahead and add in trash can, or delete, I should say. That way we can see the word delete there, and we'll come back and add the delete functionality in trash can later. But we have it listed on the screen, so we are good to go. Next, outside of this div, I want to add another div. So we're going to go outside of this div, underneath it, but just above the closing tag for the box. I'm going to add the heading text that we created earlier. Let's close it up. Let's give it a title of players page, and we'll give it a description of update the players information below. And hit save. Okay, and then now you see we have the heading text on the screen in addition to the text added onto the page. So now what we want to do is just add in the form, and we're going to create it as a separate component because we have quite a bit of client-side functionality in our form, and we don't want we want to keep this as a server file. So underneath the heading closing tag, we're going to add a div. We're going to give it a class name, and we'll say flex column, and we'll go give it a gap of 8, and a margin top of 8. 7, 8. Hit save. And we don't see anything just yet. That's fine. Now let's go into forms and let's type in update player form.js, and we'll mark it as use client. RFCE update player form. Hit save, and we'll go ahead and add in, well, might as well pass it now. Pass in player because that's the information we want to be shown. And just to make sure it's working, we'll need updated player form. We just want to pass in player, and we'll go player.name just to make sure it's working. And if we come back here, we'll go update player form, and let's go player is equal to player. Yep, and we'll hit save. And now you see the player form is accepting the information based on the player that we found, because we're passing again as a prop. So perfect. So now we can keep the individual page open, but what I really want to focus on is the individual form. And actually what we can do is we really can copy quite a bit of the information from the new player form. So I'm going to go into the new player form, and what we want to grab from this is quite a bit. Well, I tell you what, we'll type in the imports and then we'll copy and paste some of the code to make it a little easier for us. So we're going to import, first we'll need use state, obviously. So we'll go use state. And then I think we're going to we need to use router, because once we're done, we're going to want to route, and make sure you're importing this from Next Navigation, because once we're done, we're going to route back to the home page where our listing of all users or all players are listed, right? And then everything else we can kind of input along the way, or we can bring in along the way. What I do want to save us some time and grab is the state variables listed here. That way we don't have to worry about retyping all of them over again. So just the ones for the name, the jersey, the plays, and select sport, we're going to grab those. And let's just paste those in. And instead of submitting, I tell you what, let's go ahead and grab the router and submitting. Let's copy it and we'll paste it in. Instead of submitting, I would like for this to say updating, and we'll say set updating, and we'll hit save. And then underneath the router, we can actually grab these exact same functions. So we'll go, is that all of them? Yep. And then we'll just paste them in listed here. And then I know we have our handle submit function, but I may type that one out because it's not that much of code, and it'll probably make it a little easier versus trying to copy and paste it in and make so many changes. But we'll go const handle submit. Of course, this is an asynchronous function. We'll pass in the event. And inside of this function, we want to start by preventing the event default. And then we'll go inside of it, we'll pass in a try catch, and we'll say set updating, and we'll make it true, because we know that at this point we want to say we are in the process of updating. And then we'll say await, and then we want to say updated player, and make sure it's coming from lib actions. And then we want to pass in this one, we want to pass in the ID, and we're going to set it equal to the player.id. And then we'll pass in the name as name. We'll say jersey, Jersey, is going to be equal to parse int jersey, and that one was jersey number. And then come outside of that parentheses and we'll type plays for plays. And then for sport, we'll go select sport. And that should care for that. And then underneath the await update player, we want to go router.push. And we want to push you back to the home page if everything went well. And then inside of the catch portion, we want to console. We want to log any errors that we may get. So failed to update player. And then just put the error in the console. That way we'll have it. And then finally, if I NALLY, we'll say set updating to false. Because at that point, we're no longer updating. It should be done either successfully or not successfully. So now we'll need to remove this div and pass in the form. So we'll go form, and inside of the form I want a on submit function, and of course we're going to pass in handle submit. And we'll go back to the new player form, and I'm just going to copy the same styling and hit save. Okay, yep, no errors. That looks good. So now the first one is going to be a div, and we can actually copy this one. I'm going to copy them one by one just to minimize any likelihood of errors. And we'll say, how do we want to do this? So we'll say the value is name, placeholder, input, UT. Okay, and it's not showing the name just yet, but that's okay. So in order for it to show the name, I'm going to make a few little updates. So we'll say on change will be handle name change. Yep. We're going to say value is going to remain the name. Placeholder is going to remain name. And I think we'll keep that as is. And that looks pretty good. We'll hit save. Oh, here we go. Sorry about the little background noise there. All right, and go on submit. We've got that there. And I want to, we have the value on change. Where's my handle name change? I have it there, set name, event.target.value. Yep. And the player's name. Let me see something. Alright. So right here we wanted to show her name. What am I missing? Let me see. I got the form. Give me just a second. Shouldn't matter, but I'm gonna add it. Thanks. And uh-oh. There we go. But it should have worked without the need to pass in the player like that. Normally it would have just popped right up, but that's okay. This works too though. Oh, I know what I didn't do. Let me do it like this. So instead of passing it here, let's just set this as the default value to be the player.name. And then this one is going to be player.jersey. and this one will be player.plays, and then this one will be player.sport. Okay, now that should take care of it. Sorry about that. I was drawing a brain fart for a minute. All right, so that takes care of that one. So now we just need to bring in the additional ones. So we'll go div, and for this update player, we'll go ut, bring it in, and value is there. Yep, let's hit save. 18 is showing up, perfect. So now we'll go back and player ran underneath that div. Just go ut, boom, save, and we see it 4, perfect, listed there. Last but not least, selected sport. Let's save it. We'll copy it, excuse me, paste it, and let's update this. Hit save. Boom, we see the sports listed there as well. And then last but not least, we need the button, and we can just copy the button and the toast notification outside of that div here, and change this to updating, and then change this to updating. Updating, and make this update. All right, let's hit save. And I need to bring in this. Okay, there we go, perfect. So now I'm just going to change the jersey number to 20. No, actually, let's do it like this. Let's go jersey number 20, and let's hit update. So we see that it's, let's see, did it update? Let me open this up a little bit to see if we get an error. All right, so I'm gonna go into Jace, and we're just gonna add, we'll just say Jace goat. Did we get an error? Oh, I see. I don't see a handle jersey number change, but no, this needs to be handle submit. Sorry about that. Handle submit. There we go. Now let's refresh. Let's say Jace goat. Updating Jace goat. And let's go back to Jada. And let's hit clear. Let's hit 25. Update. Updating. Boom. Okay. There we go. All right. So that works. So now what we need to do is take care of the delete functionality. So what we'll do next is we will go to our actions, and we'll create a folder, or excuse me, a file named delete player.js. And this is going to be a fairly simple function. We just want the ability to delete a player. And I mean, you could pass in, I'm going to pass in all the event data, but you could do it a little simpler. There's a few ways to do this, but the way we're going to do it for this particular project is we'll mark it use server. We'll import Prisma. We'll say export async function delete player. We'll say event data. And we'll start with the same, no, don't need the form. We'll start with the exact same destructuring. So we'll go here, then there, and we'll do a try catch block. Sorry about that. And then really all that we need inside of this try catch block is const deleted player is equal to await Prisma player model dot delete, where ID is equal to ID. And then we just need to return deleted player. Yep, it's that same one. Perfect. Oh, let's make sure we pass in this ID too. Really don't need these. We can remove these. We shouldn't need them. And then here we'll go console.log error deleting player. We'll go throw new error. And we'll error plus message. Hit save. And then let's go back to the page. We can close out that for right now. Let's go back to the page. And then now what we want to do is we want to update this delete button, because it obviously won't work on its own and delete the player. So we'll go ahead and create a separate delete button. So inside of components, let's add a file named delete button.js. And inside of this delete button, we'll start by setting this as a use client, and let's just get something on the screen. So we'll go RFCE. Let's go delete button. And inside of this, we'll pass in a player ID. And if we go back to the page and we remove the word delete, let's go ahead and replace it with the delete button or delete function that we just created. So we'll go delete component delete button. And player ID is going to be equal to player.id. And if we hit save, let's go back. Now it says delete button on the screen. So, and yeah, we passed it in. So we actually can close this page out. And let's go back to the delete button component. That's where we're going to spend a little bit of time. So first, we'll start by bringing in useState. I'm going to use a React FI trash icon. We can bring in button from nextui. That way we'll get a little hover effect, and we'll bring in use router from next navigation. And then inside of the delete button component or function, we'll start by creating some state variables. So we'll go deleting, and then we'll go set deleting, and we'll set it equal to use state, and the state, it'll start out as false, and then we'll say const router is equal to use router. Use router. What did I just import? I don't need a user. Okay, and then now we need to just have the delete functionality. So we'll go const handle delete is equal to, and we'll just pass a function here. We'll go try catch, and we'll start with we'll start by selecting deleting to true, because the state at that point will be true. And we'll go await delete player, and just arrow down if it's not up top to where it's the delete player from the lib directory that we just created. And what we want to pass in is the ID, and we want to pass the player ID. And then we'll go router.push, push you back to the home screen, and we'll go console.log error, deleting player, ERR. And I'm not going to worry about throwing an error, but I am going to go finally. Finally, let's do set deleting, and let's set it to false. Okay, so now that we have the functionality, let's go ahead and update the return so we can see it come to life on screen. So let's go with button, and remember this is the button from nextui, so it's a capital B. We'll go variant of light. We'll go on click, and what we want to pass into it is the handle delete function. And then we'll say disabled, and we want deleting, disabled. Okay. And then now within it, we'll go deleting. We'll go deleting. And then we'll go, if it's not showing deleting, we want it to show the FI trash icon. We'll give it a height of 4 and a width of 4. Hit save. This should update. Yep, we see an update. Now just to test it out to make sure it's working, I'm gonna click delete. We see deleting, we get redirected. The user is no longer there. We go to the database. We don't see the player, we only see Gsql, and we see Gsql listed on the screen here. So perfect. So we got that updated as well. Now the only other thing we got left to do before we deploy it is to update the search functionality so that we can, if you recall, on the main website, we have the ability to search for users. So like if I search for Tommy, it goes to Tommy. If I search for Secure, it goes to Secure. If I search for JA, and I got a bunch of JAs. If I put a C, I got 2. If I put an X, I got none. If I put Z, I got 1. If I put a D, I got 1. So we just want to add in this search functionality. So let's start by closing out these files because we're done with them. And if we go back to our file labeled in components and go to the file that is search.js, that's going to take us to the search file where we have our search bar and search icon. Let's bring in a few other things in order to bring this to life and get it working. Of course, we're going to need use state, but we're going to need a few things from React. We're going to use search params, and we're also going to use router, and those are coming from next navigation. Inside of the search, let's pass in the router first. It really didn't matter. Use router. And we can remove this. And then underneath it, let's create a variable for search params, SEARCH param, PARAMS, and we'll go use search params. And then we'll also create some state for the query. And we'll go set query is equal to use state. And we'll go search params dot get, and what we want to get is the query, or we just want to return some empty parentheses. So now we'll need to create, we'll need to create a handle search function so that when called, it performs the search activity. So we'll go const handle search, SEARCH, is equal to event, and inside of it we'll go const new query is equal to event.target.value, target.value trim. Then we'll go set the query, and we want to set it to the new query, the result. And then we'll say const params ms is equal to new URL search params. There it go. And what we want to pass in is the search params. Yep. And then we'll say params.set, and we want to set the query, query, and we'll say new query. And then finally, we'll go router.replace, and we'll pass in some temporal literals here. We'll go /?, and we'll say $ open brackets params dot toString, and then we want to make sure we call it. So now let's just hit save. And then the only other thing we have left to do within this file is if we go to the input and underneath the class name, let's add an onChange, and what we want to call is handle search. So that onChange is calling this function that we just created. And then we want the value to be query. And that is what we just created here. So now let's save this file. And what we want the ability to search is our list of player cards. So if you recall where we listed our player cards, we want to search the player list. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go to the actual components directory, and let's go to page.js, and this player list, what we want to do is we want to pass in the query, and then inside of the player list we want to pass in query, and we want to set it equal to query. And then we also want to update our functionality here as well. So right above this function to find the collections, let's just remove it, and we're going to type in one a little different. So let's go let collections, and we'll just call it as a variable, but don't set it equal to anything. So we'll say if the query, and then we'll say collections is equal to await Prisma.player.findMany. We'll say where, and then we'll pass in name contains ins. The name should contain the query, and you could set this to the name. I just chose to do name because we're searching for a name, but you could set it to sport. Anything that is within the player model, that's what you can query. But I just did name, and then the mode we want is not node, mode, M-O-D-E. We want to set it to insensitive, I-N-S-E-N-S-I-T-V-E. T-I-V-E. T-I-V-E. What this is just basically saying that it's not case sensitive, or it is case sensitive, excuse me. So you just want to kind of be mindful of that. And then we'll say else collections is equal to await Prisma.player.findMany. And it's saying query is not defined. So let's see what we got here. Yep, got to call it up here. Const query, Q-U-E-R-Y, is equal to search params ? Query, Q-U-E-R-Y, or empty string. And we'll hit save, and search params is not defined, of course, so we'll need to bring that in, and the way we're going to get that is it's going to be passed in as a prop to the home page. And let's see, what other error message did I make here? Find many with a lowercase, that needs to be uppercase. Find many. There we go, no error. And let's add a player, see if it's working. Let's go with Tommy Jones. We'll go number 32. We'll say he had 13 plays, and he plays basketball, so he didn't get a lot of burning time. We'll hit submit and refresh the page. We see Mr. Tommy Jones listed here, and if we type in TO, we see that we just get Tommy back. If we type in JAC, we just get Jace back. Okay, so now that we have both of these things cared for, the last thing that I want to do is deploy it. So we'll need to do a couple little things before we connect back with vercel. The first thing is going to be inside of our package.json. Because we're working with Prisma and the way the Prisma functionality works, we need to run a post install. And what we want to run is Prisma generate. And we'll hit save. The next thing we want to do is, because we got quite a bit of functionality in our update form and our new player form, we need to update our ESLint so that it is ignoring those characters that are being flagged by that will be flagged by vercel. Took me a minute to figure this one out, but nevertheless we got there. So we'll say rules, and inside of rules we're going to pass in react/no, and we're going to say no-unescaped, CAPUNESCAPED entities, ENTITIES, and we're going to set that equal to 0, and then we'll hit save. The next thing I want to do, I want to commit this to GitHub. So if you're in VS Code and you click on this source control, it's going to have all of the files within this directory. I'm just going to name this project we're going to make this our first commit. So we'll say first commit, and we'll just commit it, and let's publish the branch. And I'm going to make this one public so I can share it with you all. And we'll give it, and we see that it is successfully uploaded. So now we'll just go to GitHub. We see it listed here. Let's just make sure it has the main thing, well, of course the site, but I see that it has the Prisma, the post install Prisma generate, and it has make sure it has the ESLint as well. Where is it? Yeah, you see it right here. There we go. Okay, so it has it as well. So now we should be ready to deploy. So I'm just going to go back to my team, and we'll go add new project, and we're going to add this project that we just created. And the only thing we need to do is add our environment variables. So we go back to our project, and let's just copy the environment variables from the file, close it out, and if you just paste it into the key, vercel does all the hard lifting for you. And if we click deploy, we'll give it a few minutes. And we'll give it a few moments while it's still going. Okay. And so far so good. No errors just yet. Okay, and we got the congratulations screen. And if we continue the dashboard, just click the domain. There you have it. You see we are up and going. The padding on this seems a little off, but not sure why that is off because it is fine here. But nevertheless, we are up and running and good to go. Let's just test it out right quick. Let's go with Jazz. She's number 10. 2 plays, and she plays soccer. Hit submit. Yeah, so I think this is just with the browser. I'm not sure why it's looking the padding is a little off on the browser. Because it's fine within what's the name of this browser? This is Edge, but for some reason Chrome is giving me a little pushback. But nevertheless, it is deployed, the functionality is working, and we are all set and good to go. So I hope you enjoyed this full stack Crud application with deployment. If you have any other suggestions, feel free to leave me a comment. Please leave me a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for